In our problem, a newspaper finds that the mean number of typographical errors per page is 4. So again, there are our keywords that we're going to be looking for. Our mean being average, and our interval is per page. So there's some of our clues. So we're told that the mean is 4. We want to find the probability that if we pull out a sample, that we would find exactly 3 errors on a page, or at most 3 errors on a page, or at least 3 errors on a page. And I've written up a chart here to help you see how to formulate your problem in Minitab, just to make it a little bit easier. So if you could copy down this problem or print it out and keep it handy, it might make your work in Minitab a bit simpler. When you're looking at x equal a certain number, you're going to be using just a basic probability command in Minitab, and the wording that you might see when you're looking at x equal to a certain number is, what is the probability that x will equal, or that you will have exactly some number? And I'm going to show you how to use that in Minitab. Before we put it in Minitab, let's look at how we'll write this in symbolic form. The probability of finding exactly 3 errors in symbolic form would be px equal to 3. So to write that in symbolic form means to condense it down using only variables and numbers. So now let's take a look at how we'll enter that in and use Minitab.
So let's take a look at calculating the probability of exactly 3 errors in the newspaper in Minitab. Go under CALC and then look for probability distributions. And this time we're going to look for Poisson. Click on Poisson. And since we're not looking for cumulative probability in this case, we want an exact probability. You're going to click the probability bubble. Enter in the given mean per interval, and in this problem the mean per interval was that there were on average 4 typographical errors per interval, so per page. So we would enter in 4 here. And then we're going to input a constant, and that constant is the value of interest. And our value of interest is what is the probability of finding 3 errors. So we're going to enter in 3. And then we're going to click OK and see what Minitab tells us. Minitab tells us that the probability of finding exactly 3 errors is 0.1953, so that's 19.5% chance of finding exactly 3 errors.
So our next question asks us for the probability of at most 3 errors on a page. Now, what is at most? So we want to look for at most, and at most is going to be right here in this column of our chart. So at most is saying x is less than or equal to some number. So when we set up our probability in Minitab, we're going to switch to using our cumulative probability, and the reason we do that is because Minitab gives us the cumulative probability to the left of a number. So let's take a look at writing this in symbolic form and entering it in Minitab. So to write this in symbolic form, we are going to say, as I said a moment ago, that the probability of x is less than or equal to 3. So entering that in Minitab,
so now we want Minitab to tell us the probability that we would find less than or equal to 3 typographical errors on a page, and what that is essentially asking is that we would find 0, 1, 2, or 3 errors. So we're going to be looking for a cumulative probability this time. We want to go back under Calc and probability distributions again, and go back to Poisson. And this time we're going to look for cumulative probability, so change the bubble. The mean stays as 4, and the input constant stays as 3. And the reason it stays as 3 is because we are looking for or equal to 3. We don't need to change that value any. So we click OK. And Minitab gives us the probability that x is less than or equal to the value that we input, which was 3, and that's what we want to know. Our value is 0.433470, so we could say that the probability that x will be less than or equal to 3 is 43.3%.
So our last situation asks us to find at least 3 errors on a page. So at least 3 errors is asking to find 3 or 4 errors. So at least is down here in this last column, and that's saying x greater than or equal to some number. And that is also asking us to use the cumulative probability. But notice in this column, we need to do a little bit more work. We're going to need to enter in the next lower value, and then we're also going to need to find the complement of our result. So let's take a look at how we set that up and how we work it in Minitab. When we write this one in symbolic form, we're going to be looking for the probability of x greater than or equal to 3. Now that's counterintuitive because we use the word least. We want to think less than, but when we say at least, we're thinking that at least 3 is the smallest value and then greater than that. So the smallest value or more. So at least 3 or more than that.
This time we want Minitab to tell us the probability that we will find greater than or equal to 3 errors. In other words, that we'll find 3 or 4 errors. So what we need to do is ask Minitab to calculate what it can calculate, and then we have to do some arithmetic to figure out the rest. Now remember, Minitab is calculating the cumulative area to the left of the value we put in. So what we're going to do is input less than or equal to 2, and then we're going to take the complement of that to find the probability of 3 and 4. So we're going to go back under CALC, and we're going to go to probability distribution and Poisson, and we're going to go to cumulative probability, the mean being 4, but instead of inputting the constant of 3, which is intuitively what you might think you'd want to put in there, we want to put in 2, because remember, we want Minitab to give us the cumulative area up to that number, and we're actually interested in greater than or equal to 3. So we want to calculate the area up to 2, and then if we take the complement of that, then we'll have the probability of including 3 and 4. So there is the probability that x will be less than or equal to 2, which is 0.238. So a 23.8% chance that we will have a probability of less than or equal to 2. Now the complement of that would be 1 minus 0.238.
So if 0.238 takes up the less than or equal to 2 values, then the 3 and 4 will take up the rest of the percentage of the whole 1. So hopefully that kind of makes sense as to why we need the complement. So we've taken up 0, 1, and 2 with the probability of 0.238103. But remember, probability is from 0 to 1, so we have all of 100%. So we are interested in the probability of 3 or 4 errors because we want greater than or equal to. So to find out how much is left over, then we need to go 1 minus 0.23103, and that would give us our remaining probability. So that tells us that our probability here is 0.762, which makes a lot of sense because there's a high probability that we would find 3 or 4 errors. Okay, so I hope this helps you understand a little bit more about how to use Minitab to calculate the Poisson probabilities.